Hello and welcome to the Measure of Whisky, where we discuss all things Scotch whisky. This week we are going to discuss food pairings with unpeated single malt Scotch whisky.
Rising, and the race is on. The city's gonna be a mess.
Right, so first thing I have to mention, this episode is going to be split into two parts. First of all, I am going to focus on unpeated Scotch whiskies, what pairs well with unpeated Scotch whiskies. The next episode is going to focus only on peated Scotch whiskies because there is a big difference. You want to be pairing different foods with peated whisky and different foods with unpeated Scotch whisky. So let me tell you first of all, what do I have on my smorgasbord here? We've got some oat cakes, we've got some goat's cheese, variety of nuts, pears, apples, dried cranberries, and some dark chocolate. Before we dive into what pairs particularly well with some different scotches that I've got here, the first thing I need to mention is whenever you are pairing food with Scotch whisky, there's a few very important rules you're going to want to follow. Don't pair anything that is overpowering, too spicy, too much garlic. These things will have a real dramatic impact on the whisky. Remember, we are more concerned here with tasting the Scotch and enjoying the Scotch rather than the foods. This is just a little bit of a compliment. So, I don't want to say purchase things that are bland, but you kind of are. That's the sort of route that you're going to end up going down. Things that don't have too strong a flavour because we don't want it to impact the whisky. I've got 4 drams here that we're going to make our way through, and I'm going to give suggestions as to what would be an excellent pairing for these drams. Now, we're talking about nibbles, finger food. We're not pairing with meals here. We're just imagining we've got some friends over, we're going to be drinking some whiskey, bring out some nibbles and food that people can enjoy along with the whiskey, and it's not going to tarnish their experience of the actual whiskey itself. So we're going to start on the outside here. I have a Glenfarclas 12, which we have right here, and I chose this primarily because it's readily available. You can find Glenfarclas 12 pretty much anywhere, and it is one of my go-tos. It's fabulous, it's super light, it's matured in an ex-bourbon barrel, sitting at 43%, so it's not too heavy at all on the alcohol content. Really easy going, really nice to start with. Super fresh. Right, here's my suggestion. Oat cakes and goat cheese. Now, for those of you who are not sure what an oat cake is, if I was to describe an oat cake to you, it's probably the most boring and bland food implement that you could possibly imagine, and that's the beauty of it. Right, there's basically no flavour. You might as well be eating cardboard when you're eating an oat cake. But the beauty of it is that it doesn't have anything that's going to influence whatever you're drinking or whatever you put on top of it. Right, it's just so plain and it's so bland. Now this is plain goat's cheese. I know there's lots of goat's cheese on the market that are sort of finished in all sorts of weird and wonderful flavours, but we want to try and keep things as plain as possible. Goat's cheese is nice and soft, but it's got a real creamy element to it, which works fantastically with the freshness of this ex-bourbon cask Glenfarclas. A little bit tangy as well, but it just complements it incredibly well. And lots of people like cheese and crackers, right? Let's be honest, it just works well when you're drinking. So, that's really creamy, that's delightful. That really works. That genuinely works. It's going to be a bit awkward, me eating and drinking in front of you in the camera here. No, that is magnificent, that's really, really great. You still get that sharpness of the Farclas 12, but it brings a real kind of depth to it. Okay, great start. Goat's cheese, oat cake, Glenfarclas 12. Right, moving on to our second dram, we have an Aberlour 12. So remember, everything we're doing here is completely unpeated, 40%, super light, super easy going. but it has a, you know, an element of sweetness. It's finished in a Oloroso sherry cask. You can really get that right on the nose. Lots of vanillas, it's quite earthy as well. So, my suggestion, selection of nuts that we have here. So we've got almonds, Brazil nuts, macadamia nuts, walnuts. Nothing roasted, and again, nothing too extreme with regards to the flavour profile. All these nuts are quite fatty, so they offer quite a sort of thicker element on the mouthfeel, if that makes sense, which matches quite nicely to the Aberlour here. Now, having a handful of nuts like this on the table when you're drinking an Aberlour 12, it's just a fantastic complement. You get that saltiness, that fattiness coming out of the nuts, and this is quite rich, it's quite deep, so it marries up really, really nicely. Fantastic. Oh, that works. That really works. Get that malty element really comes through in the dram. Okay, on to the next one. Dram number 3 on the list today is going to be our Arran 10. In my opinion, probably one of the best smelling single malt Scotch whiskies on the market. It's unbelievably fresh and fruity, it's incredible. So bottled at 46%, so a little bit higher than the other two, but you really don't notice it. Not one bit, not on the nose, not on the tasting. It is so easy going, and it has real amazing fruit elements that come to the forefront when you're drinking this. So I've selected some pear and some apple. Now, with regards to the apple, you want to be careful. You don't want to be too bitter, and you don't want it to be too sweet. Somewhere kind of in the middle towards the bitter side of things. I think this is called an envy, this particular strand of apple, this type of apple. It's a bit more edging towards the bitter side of things, but you still get a nice touch of sweetness coming out of it. And whenever you're picking fruits for pairings when it comes to Scotch whisky, don't get anything that's overly citrusy. You know, lemons, limes, oranges, that doesn't work at all. These are quite mellow, they're very mellow when it comes to that nature of things, and they really bring out the elements of the dram, especially the pear. This pear is incredible. Even just smelling the whisky whilst having the pear. Honestly, it's amazing how good that is. Oh, fresh, delicate, soft, and with that incredible Arran 10, just, oh, it matches amazingly well. Right, final dram, Glenmorangie, the Accord. So, this particular Glenmorangie has been matured in ex-bourbon and ex-sherry cask. I mean, look at the colour of that. Look at how deep that is. That is the influence from the Oloroso sherry cask that it has been matured in. It looks wonderful. It smells incredible. You instantly get that sort of Christmas pudding dark fruits straight off the top right on the nose. My suggestion for anything that is similar to this, now this isn't a pure sherry bomb, but if you had a sherry bomb or anything that has that real sherry influence on it, dark chocolate and, well, craisins, but they're dried cranberries. Amazing. They pair incredibly well. The benefit of the dried cranberries is that you still have an element of bitterness, although they are still really sweet. They just bring out the sweetness in this. It's unbelievable. And if you're going to do chocolate, make sure it's dark chocolate. Anything too milky is going to really interfere with the elements in the whiskey. This is the highest content of cocoa I think you can get in a dark chocolate, so you know, there's not much chocolatiness to it, but it's phenomenal. It's more just cocoa, but again, it just pairs up. It matches magnificently well with this dram here. Now, little secret for you: try peppermint chocolate. This is dark chocolate with peppermint in it. It changes the profile of the dram dramatically. It brightens it up, like as you would imagine eating a peppermint chocolate. It brightens the whole thing up, but still, you still taste all that sort of real amazing Christmas puddingy dark, earthy flavours from the dram. It is amazing. Unreal. Absolutely unreal. It's warm, it's rich, it's fruity. That's unbelievable. What a pairing. Peppermint, dark peppermint chocolate. Crazy. Right, so that's it. Whenever you are pairing food with Scotch whisky, importantly, don't bring in any foods that are spicy or overly garlicky or have elements that are going to really affect the whisky. We want things that are somewhat neutral, but they offer something that really elevates the dram. And I tell you what, this board here is fantastic. That's not everything though. I'm sure you have some amazing ideas of your own. I'd love to hear about them. Do you have anything in particular that you like to pair with your whisky? Please let me know in the comments below. Next video, I'm going to be back with food pairings with peated Scotch whisky. Until then, slange.
Is on. This city's gonna be